Hey guys, so today I want to talk a little bit about why we have so much reactivity in dogs in the United States. As a trainer, I would say almost 90% of the calls that I get for training have to do with reactivity. And maybe that's not the primary issue. There may be other things going on. There might be aggression or serious separation anxiety, but reactivity is a part of most of the programs that I do in training. And I want to start to have these conversations with people because I think that a lot of the reactivity comes from misinformation and people taking action on that misinformation, believing that they're doing the best thing for the dogs. And so this reactivity is sort of being developed by accident, but it's so prevalent. It's one of the number one questions on, any site that you go on where people are asking questions about dogs, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's Google, no matter what it is, there are tons and tons of questions. And they usually ask, how do I get my dog to stop barking at other dogs? How do I get my dog to behave better on leash and stop jumping and pulling toward dogs and people, so on and so forth. So today I don't want to talk about the many reasons for reactivity. We will get into that in another video. What I primarily want to talk about is how we can unknowingly create reactivity in our dogs, thinking that we're doing the right thing. So this begins with socialization. And a lot of people believe that when they're raising a puppy, socialization means getting that puppy to interact with everything in the environment. If they're scared of something, let's put a treat over there and have my dog go and get it. If they're scared of a person, let's have the person give them food. If they're scared of a dog, let's let them interact. There's a lot of pressure for dogs to interact with every single thing. Dogs being able to greet each other on leash is another one. What happens is when we do this, we are essentially teaching our dogs that we want them to have a reaction to everything, right? If I tell you I want you to interact with everything, I'm essentially telling you that I want you to have a response, a reaction to everything in the environment. And one of the things that I truly believe is that socialization is ultimately about neutrality. Neutrality is the opposite of reactivity. A dog that is neutral is a dog that ultimately is confident because they don't have to have a response to everything around them. And they don't even notice the things around them. So when we talk about, oh, my dog's so anxious, or my dog's really afraid of this, or my dog's very insecure, those things, yes, a dog can be those things genetically, but oftentimes we create those things by really forcing our puppies, young dogs, to interact with all of the things around them. So then what do? What's the response? Well, the response is to get them to interact with you in the presence of other things. If I'm walking my puppy, and this is going to happen soon, my puppy's not yet fully vaccinated, so we're not doing that quite yet. I will start taking him to some safe spaces and working on some of those things. But what I ultimately want to do is say, hey, there's all these things around in the environment. There are people, there are dogs, there are lots of different, there are cars, there's noises, there's things that look weird, sound weird. But your job really is to focus on me, or to pass by those things without the pressure to interact. And a lot of people say, well, my dog's really friendly. They want to interact with everything. That's oftentimes the way reactivity starts, is dogs have this innate desire to go and to interact with everything. Well, what ends up happening is they start having these little teeny negative experiences, because a dog may go up to a person and solicit attention, but they don't necessarily want the kind of attention that they get from that person, right? Most people have this tendency to lean over dogs, to pet them on the top of their heads, to linger too long. If you watch the majority of dog greetings, they're very short. They're very brief. The closeness that element of the greeting is usually a couple seconds, and then dogs decide what they're going to do from there. They either go their separate ways or they back up and play gesture. If you notice, when dogs start to switch into play gestures, they're usually far from each other. They don't stay close in each other's space. But people have this tendency to stay really close in a dog's space. And so dogs start to experience, they go, well, I like going up to people and I really want to do it, but every time I do it, it's just a little too much. And over time, that becomes, you know what? I don't think I want to do that anymore. But then the humans go, but they love people. They always want to go up to people. So then the humans continue to encourage that. And eventually the dog goes, I don't really like the way that the interaction is going. And so now I'm going to start to avoid a little bit, or I'm going to show these little signs of stress in hopes that everybody around notices that I don't want this to happen. And then when people don't notice, then the forward projected reactivity starts to come out, because by that time the dog goes, I've been telling you guys over and over and over again that I don't want to have this interaction, yet I keep being put in this position. So now I'm going to have to tell you in no uncertain terms that I really don't want to have this interaction. So what I try to teach my clients is we have to notice the subtle signs of stress, the subtle signs of discomfort or uncertainty, so that we can hear our dogs the first time. Because when we don't hear our dogs the first time, we always run into issues, because our dogs want to be heard. They're just not lingual. I don't know if you can even say that word without like bilingual or whatever. So multilingual. So our dogs don't use language in the same ways that we do. They show us first through their bodies, through changes in their body language. If we're lucky, right, we get to see those pieces. Most people miss all of the subtle signs, and they don't notice anything until the signs are much less subtle. The dogs are growling, they're baring their teeth, they're snarling, they're lunging, barking. That's usually when we notice, but by that time, the dogs have often given us plenty of notice. So we have to learn to identify that the first time, right? So the point of socialization, and gets confused oftentimes. I even hear trainers still telling people to have everybody give their puppies food. That is by far some of the worst advice around socialization that I have ever heard, because it forces, especially if a dog has high food drive, or you're using very high value food and treats, then that puppy or that young dog is basically, they're like, God, I really want that food, but I really don't want to go over to that person. And you can literally see it in every part of the dog's body. They're literally just like, ugh, I gotta get that food. And no matter how stressed the dogs are, they'll take the food, right? If they're a dog that's got really high food drive. Of course, some dogs get so stressed that they won't take the food. But we have a lot of dogs that will take the food, even though everything in their body is saying that they don't want that interaction that comes on the other end. And so we keep forcing dogs and forcing dogs and forcing dogs. And I have a lot of people tell me, oh yeah, we worked with the trainer. They told us to have everybody give our dogs food, and it worked. Our dog got a lot more comfortable going up to that person. And then I asked them, how long did it work for? Because once that dog hits maturity, and once that dog learns, wait a second, I can get food anywhere, right? Most dogs in this country are quite spoiled. My dogs are spoiled, so it's not a judgment. But most dogs go, well, I can get that food anywhere. I don't really need to do anything for that. And I'm really done with those close interactions. And so now in comes the reactivity. Now, is this always the case? No, I have actually seen a few dogs that seem to have legitimately gotten better from that from that kind of training. But honestly, it's the minority. The majority of dogs that I've seen that have had that through the socialization period and through their critical development periods, it doesn't last. It does well for a while, but eventually at maturity, at adolescence, you start to see reactivity. So when I focus on socialization, my focus is be able to pay attention to me when I ask, right? I don't need my dog focused looking at me every single second. But what I want, sorry, I have to do this thing with this AI camera because it just switched on me. Okay, there we go. So you do these like gestures and then the camera's like, okay, you want me to do something different. So anyway, back to my point, which is, oh my God, I totally spaced out. Yes, okay. So when I'm working on socialization, what I want is, hey, there's all this stuff going on in the environment, but I want you to be attentive to me. I don't want you to be super attentive to all those things in the environment, because inevitably something's going to spook or startle a dog. A dog's going to get overexcited to go explore something or meet someone or meet a dog. And if I have my dog on leash, guess what's going to start to happen is they're going to start to get frustrated, right? And frustration is another element of reactivity. Right? So a lot of times I say the majority of reactivity that I see comes from a dog having a series of negative experiences. And you can tell that because the dog used to be very social and outgoing and friendly. And all of a sudden that dog is telling everybody and everything that it doesn't want them to approach. Right? The dog that is frustrated is usually the dog that was allowed every single day to go to the dog park. This is what happens all the time, right? So the dog was going to the dog park every single day. They were extremely overexcitable and overstimulated by dogs. They had a bad experience at the dog park. And then their owner stops taking them to the dog park because they don't want them to have any more bad experiences. Well, now that dog that has basically been getting a drug at the dog park every single day now is prohibited from having those experiences, and now they're leashed all the time. And so every time they see a dog, they go, oh my God, I'm gonna get to play with this dog because I got to play with every single dog before. And their owner goes, no, you don't get to play with that dog, right? Because you're on leash. And then the dog sees another dog and another dog, and finally the dog's screaming, going, I want to go play with that dog because you raised me and conditioned me to believe that I can go and interact with any dog that I see, which is the dog park environment, right? That's what the dog park teaches. It's one of the many reasons why trainers almost despise dog parks, because it puts wrong ideas into the dog's mind. And it doesn't encourage calm behavior around dogs. It encourages this strong, reactive, excited behavior, over-aroused behavior, which is the reason that's the cause behind so many of our behavioral issues that we struggle with. So in case you ever wonder, why do dog trainers, hate dog parks so much? That's the ultimate reason. So going back to socialization, the next thing that I want is for my dog to be neutral. I don't want, on a walk, my dogs don't get to interact with anyone or anything. They don't get to interact with any dogs. They don't get to interact with any people, because I allow my dogs to do that in different sets of circumstances, right? I allow my dogs to interact with all of my friends unless I have friends that don't want to interact with them. My dogs get to interact with my friends on a regular basis, right? I have friends that come over, I have friends that stay with me visiting from out of town. I train with other trainers. I'm a very social, outgoing person. So my dogs, and I have one dog who is very, very social, and he wants interactions with people. During COVID, actually, it was really difficult for him because we didn't see as many people, especially here where I live in California. He had a very, very difficult time. So I make sure that, my dogs get to see people and greet people and interact with people. within limits, right? So I'll save those for another video. I have multiple dogs, so I'm a little bit fortunate that way. They get to interact with each other. My dogs don't need to go and interact with dogs that they don't know. I also have trainer friends that I get together with, and my dogs are able to interact with their dogs, the ones that get along, right? So I have some dogs that aren't necessarily going to get along with every dog, and so they get to interact with their, circle. And so my dogs don't need to get, all of this excited, aroused energy out on the public and on strangers. Because the thing is that when we do that and we miss all those subtle signs of stress, the dogs don't have the relationship with the people or the dogs to raise their thresholds. So this is an idea that I actually don't hear a lot of people talking about. I don't hear a lot of trainers talking about it. But dogs who know each other well, their thresholds, that means the level that they can escalate to before they cross a line. That's the kind of the simplest way to explain it. It raises, right? So my dog's threshold for each other is much higher than it is for a dog that they don't know. That's the same for people, right? Somebody can say something to you and you know them and you love them and you go, yeah, it's okay because it's from someone that I know and love. Versus you hear that from a stranger and all of a sudden you're about to get into a fight, right? Dogs are very similar that way. So when we put our dogs in these situations where they're around a bunch of dogs or people that they don't know and they're having these close interactions, you're probably going to hit a point, and this is not the case with every dog, because some dogs, honestly, they're not that intelligent. They're just kind of happy-go-lucky and whatever happens, happens, right? Labs tend to be that way. But I can tell you, as someone who does a lot of work with a particular lab rescue, that they've got their lines too, right? They've got their boundaries as well. So what I want is for my dogs to be comfortable in those interactions. Just like if you think about really intense dog play as really animated conversation, really deep conversation, sharing secrets. If you think of it like that, because dog play is very intimate, it really is. If you think about it like that, think about the number of people that you would interact that way with. If that number is small, it should give you some indication about dogs, right? I'm a really social person. I can go and have a conversation with anyone. I love to be around people, but the people that I really let loose with, it's a small group of people. I'm not going and sharing all of my secrets with every stranger I pass on the street. I kind of am an open book, so if they ask me, I probably would tell them. But there's a guard I may have up, even a little bit, with somebody that I don't know or that I'm not really comfortable with. So what we want is our dogs to have their circle, right? We want our dogs to have, the circle of dogs that they get to play with on a regular basis, that they get to raise those thresholds with, that they get to be more comfortable with. And the same thing with the people. Rather than, go interact with every single thing in the environment. Because once your dog is overexcited, over-aroused by every single thing in the environment, I promise you're going to have problems. You're not going to be able to finish a walk. You're not going to be able to take a walk. Your dog's going to be pulling on leash. It doesn't matter what equipment you use. Eventually, your dog is going to start pulling. It's going to figure out how to pull on leash. Because even when we teach leash manners, a trainer can't teach leash manners without also teaching calm responses to things in the environment. I can teach a dog how to walk nicely on leash and not much consider the dog's state of mind, but that's not going to last very long. If I want to do my job well, I have to put attention to their state of mind. And so that's really the point here with the socialization is what we don't think we want it, but when problems develop, we realize what we want is our dogs to have a calm state of mind. We don't want our dogs to have a reactive state of mind. So here's my advice to you, especially if you're raising a puppy or a young dog, because that's my focus, is 8 weeks to 18 months old. That's my focus. All of the critical development periods happen within that time frame. If you want a dog that you can do anything with, that's confident, that's self-assured, that you can take anywhere that dogs are allowed, right? If you want a dog that you can do those things with, if you have the opportunity to raise that dog within that time period, 8 weeks to 18 months old, you can have the dog of your dreams. That dog can be an incredible partner. And I think ultimately that's what everybody wants. When I talk to clients, that is what they want. Everybody wants that dog. We may not have the same way of defining it, or we may not be able to put it into words, but everybody wants a companion that's going to be trusted, that's not going to create a lot of stress for them. Nobody wants a dog that's going to limit their lives to having to walk them at 5 in the morning or midnight because they can't stand the sight of another dog. Nobody wants those things, right? Nobody wants a dog that wants to bite people or fight with other dogs. And we're not going to get into genetics and all of that stuff today, but we're simply going to stick to talking about the socialization element and maintaining a focus on our dog's state of mind. State of mind is everything. When people ask me what kind of trainer I am, I tell them I'm a state of mind trainer. Because state of mind is everything. Obedience and tricks, sits and downs and go to place. Those are, when they're used well, all they are tools for shifting a dog's state of mind. But in and of themselves, they are not training. Right? So my advice is, 1, focus your raising and your walks and your exposure, your socialization on neutrality. It's a lot easier than you think. It requires patience for some dogs, but the earlier you start, the easier it is, right? Be entertaining if you have to. Sometimes when we're trying to find this balance, we end up making our dogs pretty overexcited and over-aroused by us. But honestly, I'm going to take that over my dog or my puppy doing that in the environment. Because once that becomes a habit, it's challenging to break. So what I want is wherever we go, whatever we do, my dog to be into me, to think I'm the most fun thing on the planet. I don't want my dog thinking anything else is more fun than me. So that's going to be my focus. Start small and easy, right? When your puppy's vaccinations are finished, start right outside the house and in the neighborhood. Go to quieter areas where there's not a lot of things going on and just work on that focus. Use food, right? Don't feed your puppy a huge meal before you go out. Take that same amount of food, stick it in a treat pouch, and have your dog get that food in response to giving you attention. And then as you start to increase the level of distraction, so don't take your dog to Disneyland for their first outing, okay? I have a lot of people like, the first place we went was the dog beach, and now my dog won't listen to me anywhere. It's like, yeah, you took your dog to Disneyland where all the lights were flashing and all the sounds were blaring. And yeah, now that completely, enticed your dog, and it was way more exciting than you. So now your dog doesn't want to pay any attention to you. It's not that surprising. So start simple, right? Take your dog to school, okay? And then just build on that little by little. And the more attention and focus you have, because your cue. That's your indication that you can level up, right? Oh my God, I got my dog's attention. Oh, we're working together. We're doing all the things. Okay, now I can increase the distractions, right? And now I can increase the distractions even more. And now I can test this a little bit. So do that and have your dog just focused on you. You're not going to go wrong with that. You really aren't. And as your dog gets older, especially if you're working with a puppy that's a little bit older or almost at adolescence, if you haven't done this groundwork, it is going to be more challenging if you don't have a dog that naturally wants to be attentive to you. But still do the work in the same way. Just build it up. You might need higher value treats, right? You might need something that's a little bit more rewarding. A lot of clients say, well, my dog really loves the ball. Can I use the ball? I say if you really know how to use the ball to get a dog to focus on you, that could be a great tool. But most people don't know how to do that. So the dog ends up completely obsessed about the ball and not really paying attention to you or the environment, right? So we want our dog's baseline to be attentiveness to us. That's going to be the first step. And then the second step is neutrality to things in the environment. But if we want neutrality to things in the environment, we have to give our dog something to focus on. And so that focus on us, or that responsiveness to us, because again, our dog doesn't have to be staring at us 24/7, right? And that can create other issues too, which we're not going to get into today. But what we want is that attention, and then that helps establish neutrality to all of the distractions and the things around us. That is my advice. Gosh, sorry, the camera did something again. Okay, camera, follow me. Follow me. Yay, it's following me again. Okay, that made Lexi very excited. So now she went to get her ball. Lexi, chill. Okay. All right, so I'm going to wrap up here because I think that at this point I'm saying the same thing over and over. Thank you to those who have tuned in so far. Please like and subscribe if you want more info on all things dog, especially if you're raising a dog from 8 weeks to 18 months. Almost everything that I talk about is going to be, around raising dogs in that age range. So hopefully you guys stick around, and I'll be back.